You're listening to For the Republic, a love letter to Star Wars animation.
But before we get going, I do now want to turn this to Rogue One. And the fact that after a few days after the finale dropped, I went back, I rewatched the last episode, and then immediately afterwards went right into Rogue One. And I just want to talk about how my thoughts on Rogue One have changed since Andor, what I noticed, things of that nature. First of all, I'm just going to rip the band-aid off and say that this is the most rewarding watch of Rogue One I've ever had. I've had a detailed history with this movie. Where it first came out, I really liked it. Then I went through a phase where I didn't really like it at all. And then I came back around to it around the time Andor came back. And now it's up on my rankings again. I had to adjust my Star Wars rankings again because it moved up a spot. I think it's up to number 5 or 6 now. I'll have to double check. But like how the Clone Wars has forever changed how we view the prequels, Rogue One and Andor has forever changed how I view Rogue One. I think it's the perfect companion piece to this movie. Immediately when the Ring of Kafrine scene started, I was like, well, now that I know the details, and certain lines Cassian has in that scene where it's like, Jesus, like, did they write Andor like immediately as they were writing this movie? Like, it was just like, how did they know? And obviously calling back to that is great, and they knew what they were doing there. But like, what kind of weapon? What does it do? It's just like, because Cassian at that point, we know that he has some knowledge of it, and he's like, this is just a confirmation. And then just him having to shoot Tivik, I'm like, oh God, that hurts. And you see the look on his face too.
Yeah.
But
I think the way Cassian plays that, like the way Diego Luna plays that, like all the way back in 2016, it really does lend some kind of like nuance. Again, curse word there, nuance, but like to how Cassian is, because Cassian, as it turns out, was a lot more compassionate than we all gave him credit for. Claire literally says to him, "You have to stop saving people." Yeah. So I think it still works, that whole scene of him having to ruthlessly gun down Tivik because. It clearly hurts him afterwards. It pains him afterwards, and it really lends well to like the plot line that he has with Jyn Erso and Galen and the mission he has. It's really fascinating, and again, not been a great time for discourse about like Jyn Cassian, Bix Cassian, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, fuck that. By the way, let people ship what they want to ship.
Let people ship what they want.
Strangely enough, even though I'm just huge Bix Cassian shipper now, I also ship Jyn and Cassian. I watched this movie, I watched their scenes again, I'm like, yeah, no, I still feel the exact same way. It still works. Like Tony Gilroy was like, yeah, you're gonna have to readjust the context in which you watch Rogue One now and watch their scenes. I'm like, well, no, I don't, because obviously he's still thinking of Bix at certain points, and especially at the end, it hurts like a fucking truck. But it's like, yeah, of course what it is he's accepting someone into his life for the first time since Bix left him. And I think that is, it's super impactful. And of course, him using Bix's blaster hurts so goddamn bad. But the two things, obviously, that have the biggest impact and meaning after Andor are his everything I did for the rebellion speech. And I think now is my favorite moment in the entire movie is suddenly the rebellion means something to you. I've been in this fight since I was 6 years old, and then him, you're not the only one that lost everything. Some of us just decided to do something about it. The look on his face during that scene, it's like you know how in the mid 2010s it was a really popular thing to re-edit Obi-Wan's like talk with Luke of like your father, he was one hell of a pilot, and he was a good friend, and like splice that with the Clone Wars and Revenge of the Sith.
People are gonna start probably doing
people are gonna do that with this scene in Rogue One with Andor, because
we're in for some killer
holy shit
Andor Rogue One edits, boys.
Mm-hmm.
It's gonna happen.
But it's not just Cassian, honestly, that I think their characters were enhanced by Andor, and it's like Krennic. Oh, definitely, especially after this last arc, seeing him on the other end with Tarkin, and then you may fire when ready on Scarif. Oh my God. CGI Tarkin, by the way, still don't like it. But that's a story for another
Release
time.
the Guy Henry cuts.
But like Chirrut and Baze's story and Bodhi's story, I think work so much better now. For characters that aren't in Andor, their stories and just the themes of their arc work so well with the show and other characters
Definitely.
like Will and Vel and all these other characters that we've followed throughout Andor. Also, like I put together a tweet. I was like, oh, here are off the top of my head my favorite performances in every Star Wars movie, and I changed my mind and I changed my Rogue One to Felicity Jones. It was Riz Ahmed when I first put the tweet up because he is so good as Bodhi in this movie, and again that especially that scene where he's trying to contact Radis and on the ship, and then immediately the grenade pops, and I'm like, fuck. K2's
Bodhi was my
obviously
second favorite after K2, so that one
K2
really
obviously
hurt.
his death obviously hits like a truck, and then I think the biggest thing is it turns Melshi from a background character into, oh my god, that thing hurts so bad when the camera cuts and he's just dead there as Chirrut's about to do his heroic sacrifice.
Can I make it even more devastating? So Melshi is just one more person who Cassian doesn't get to say goodbye to.
Yay!
I hate Star Wars, man.
Literally, every
God damn
character
it.
that dies in this show, Cassian doesn't get to say
Can
goodbye.
we wrap this up? I don't want to talk about this pain no more, man.
What is this? This is almost like a High Republic episode.
I know.
God damn it.
What I will say though is I think now, obviously, when I watch Rogue One by itself, I'm gonna think of it differently. And I think any future rewatches of Andor I'm going to follow it up with a watch of Rogue One. Just to make it hurt even more at the end. But this week, Lucasfilm had a special fan screening at Lucasfilm HQ of the Andor finale directly into Rogue One. And I think next year for the 10th anniversary, they should do just that. And have this on the big screen of Andor finale into Rogue One. I think that's the essential way to view this movie now. I think the beauty of Star Wars is that we have things where movies that have been out for 10, 15, 20 years can regularly get enhanced by new additions to the franchise. I think is great. Yeah. And we've talked on and on about how the Clone Wars has done this for the prequels. We, of course, have created a podcast to do just that. Believe it or not, yes, this show was made to talk about the Clone Wars. You wouldn't know it by the fact that we haven't talked about the Clone Wars in over a year, but it was made to do just that.
And it maybe will be again.
This summer. No new show until October. It's a blessing in disguise for us.
We got a Clone Wars patch.
Exactly.
I'm going to agree with you about like the Obi-Wan, about the other shows, enhancing the movies and stuff. The Obi-Wan show does the same for A New Hope. The whole Leia Obi-Wan dynamic absolutely benefits A New Hope in a lot of ways. It just completely changed how I looked at that film. And I think I have yet to watch Rogue One, but I'm just so interested to see how my viewing of Andor impacts it.
And it also really reinforced the fact that Obi-Wan should have just killed the guy. Like, buddy, you had two chances to do it. I get why he
Obi-Wan, I love you, but come on, dude.
It's like, dude, dead. And this whole shit about the thing that cracks me up the most is the fact that Luke is like, but you told me he betrayed and murdered my father, and Obi-Wan's like, well, technically, he did.
Technically, he told me that.
Because he told me that straight to my face on this fucking rocky moon.
It's like the more time we spend talking about this, the more it kind of makes sense why Obi-Wan never appeared on Ankh-To. Luke just blocked him, and he was just like, "I'm not talking to you.
I'm ghosting you." The one last thing I want to say, I didn't even realize the pun there. The one last thing I'm going to say is, this is a sentence I never thought I would say about 3 weeks ago, but I had to mentally readjust to Jimmy Smits' Bail Organa in this movie. I was like, after seeing Benjamin Bratt, I'm like, Oh wait, oh yeah, it's Jimmy. And then the scene where speaking of Leia, where they talk about going back.
I would trust her with my life.
I would trust her with my life. I'm like, fuck, it hurts so bad. But it is such a good scene. And again, I highly recommend, if you haven't yet, watching the finale, going to watch Rogue One. If you had if you ever had the question of how can we make the Scarif battle hurt more than it already does, you have your answer to that now.
Oh yes.
So go back and do that. I definitely recommend it.